Oh, Passion, it's so good to be with you this morning. I feel like Passion Church is kind of my family away from family, my home away from home, my church away from the church that I pastor. So it's so good to see you again. I think it's been since last spring I was here, but so many familiar faces. That's why it feels like family away from family. And so it's so good to be here. I'm pastoring a church in Langley. I'm interim lead, and so pray for me. You know, leading a church in leadership transition isn't easy, and yet a gift. And it's been really fun in some ways, not in all the ways. It's been really fun because there's been a lot of people just coming who are exploring Jesus, and I wonder if there's people like that in the room, and this is a good place to be if that's you. And Jerry, I think it's so helpful that you walk people through like some of those mannerisms and methods that we do in church culture, because sometimes it's super unfamiliar and we're like, why do we do that, you know? And so I started going to church when I was 17. I grew up as an atheist. My whole family's still of that mindset and worldview. And I used to think so many things were weird. The lifting of the hands, I was like, what are people doing, you know? And I just thought it was live music. It's like, oh, this is fun. They have live music here. This is really fun. And just the different things we do. I remember one time somebody gave me a Bible, like, can you read? And they said some book, and I didn't understand why at the top of each page there was like a name. It's like, why is there names at the top of the pages? And you know, nothing made sense. And so if you're in that place of life where you're exploring who Jesus is, you're in a good place. In fact, I think the text that we're going to meditate on in the first chapter of John is going to be really helpful for you. This series, I hope it's been good for you guys at Passion. It's been so good for us at our church, going through and meditating on John chapter 1. And meditating in the Hebrew understanding of meditation isn't something where we empty ourselves. Hebrew understanding of meditation is that we would actually fill our mind, but we fill our mind with thoughts of God and thoughts from God. And so as we meditate on the first chapter of John, we're praying that God would spark our curiosity, he would spark our imagination, and he would speak through us as we meditate and fill our minds of God and thoughts from God as we meditate on the first chapter this morning. You know, I just wanted to open our time with a question. And the question that I have for you this morning that I think is going to be sparked by the first chapter of John, but also that's going to move us through our time together is, are you living? It's a weird question, isn't it? Because we're all sitting here and we've all woken up and we're all alive, aren't we? We're all living. It seems so. We're alive. And yet, when we examine the text, we're going to see that John invites us into new life. And when I see that, when we get to there in just a minute, it brings to my mind, why new life? Are we not living, John? Are you and I not alive? We've gotten up, we're breathing, we're living, we're here, we're sitting, we've ate maybe, we've had coffee, like we're alive. Like if a coroner came in here and examined our bodies, he'd be like, you are alive. And yet, when I walk our streets, when I live my life, when I interact with people, it seems that there might be a difference between being alive and living. That there's a lot of hollow people, a lot of empty people walking around that are technically biologically alive, and yet I wonder if we're actually not living, and that there's actually a promise that we find in the first chapter of John about living and about life. That's not simply about being alive, but it's actually about being alive in this one who's come to be birthed in a barn. And so I know we read it, but let's read it again from the top of first chapter, chapter 1 of John. Do you guys have your scriptures with you? Your phones? It's helpful to follow along. I'll read it for us. Maybe you have it do you have it on the screen there? John chapter 1. Oh, you got me. What's your name? AJ? You're good. AJ's good. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning is an interesting way to start the text. Genesis 1:1 starts identical to John 1:1, in the beginning. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. John chapter 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. John uses the same three words to start his narrative on the biography and life of Jesus that Genesis 1:1 starts in the creation narrative. And John wants us to take note that in the beginning, he wants us to know that he's talking about Genesis. that he's going to talk about the beginning. So when we get to that part that Isaac read about light, he wants us to know that in Genesis, in the beginning, that what was birthed in the beginning is coming around again, that something that happened in Genesis 1:1 is starting again in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, capital W, was the Word. It's capital because it's referring to a person. If it was lowercase w, it would be a characteristic that God spoke something, but he's saying in the beginning was the Word. That's not simply something that God just spoke or did. It's something that he is, that there is a person he's referring to. So it's capital W. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We're talking about a person in the beginning. Oh, so that means in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, the Word that spoke over the void of the deep was a person. And that's why also in Revelation 19, it says, he's dressed in a robe and his name is the Word of God, capital W. We're talking about a person. In the beginning was the Word and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He himself, he was with God in the beginning and through him all things were made. Without him, nothing has been made that has been made. In him was life and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now there was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. In the true light that gives light to everyone, for all to see. The true light came to give light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, for all to see, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. Oh, but born of God, this new idea of life. And then the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. John gives us this promise, a promise of life, a promise of new birth that is only found in Jesus. The Word became flesh, but doesn't it provoke that question we started our time with? If John is talking about a new life born as children of God, not born of a husband or their will or born of natural descent, but there's this idea in the 13th verse of chapter 1 that we would be born to live this life. What is it? Why would it begs the question in my mind, are we not already living then? Am I not already alive and living? I'm speaking, talking, breathing, living life. Or could it be that there's more going on than meets the eye? Could it be that John's getting at something in his writings of Jesus and his account of the narrative, that there's more going on than meets the eye? It's not simply what's in front of us. That maybe there's more going on. So we're in this room all together in this collective moment. Shared experiences, shared lives, all in one space. And yet maybe there's more going on than what you and I see. That something else is at play. Is the life that John 1 is speaking about different and deeper than the life I'm already experiencing in the here and now? Is John getting at the reality that maybe there's something more, that there's something different or deeper going on than the life that you and I are experiencing here and now? That the life that makes up your daily routine and your narrative and your story and your backstory, like maybe there's something more going on than what you have experienced up to here and now. Maybe he's getting at that there's more going on. Or could it be that the promise in the passage is speaking to something bigger than what's before us? I wonder if this is the answer to our daily reality that we see around us. People functioning but not really living. People alive but not really living. That's why we'll go through life and we'll do this. We'll say, if I just have this thing, fill in the blank. If I just have this, if I had access to more resources, if I had this different job, if this relationship just worked out that way, if my family's dynamics weren't what they were, if you fill in the blank, if this, then my life, I would be living a better life. I would be actually living life. If I didn't have all my mental health stuff, then I would be living. But I wonder if what John's getting at is that there are a lot of people who are alive but not yet living, and we see this in the daily reality, and I wonder if he's getting at that. And the people of Israel would have known about this promise, would have known of this promise. And in the final book of the Old Testament, our scriptures are broken up into two sections: Old Testament, the Old Covenant. Testament means covenant. The Old Covenant, the New Covenant. The end of the Old Covenant, the end of the Old Testament, the last book to be written is the book called Malachi by the prophet Malachi. And he writes of this promise. And he says to them in the 4th chapter, the 5th verse, 4th chapter is the last chapter of the book of Malachi. And he leaves them in his last chapter, in his last writings to Israel, he leaves them with a promise. And Malachi records this. He says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. Behold, I will send you the prophet Elijah, this promised messenger. And Israel's given a promise to Elijah the prophet that will come back in preparation for the great and awesome day of the Lord. And Israel then now waits for Elijah. They're waiting and they're waiting. They're waiting for Elijah. And so then they wait and they wait and they wait. Israel keeps waiting for this promised Elijah that Malachi prophesied about. And they wait for 400 years, 400 years from Malachi to Matthew, 400 years from Malachi to the Messiah. And they wait. What are they waiting for? They're waiting for deliverance. They're waiting for the promise of life. I muted myself there. They're waiting for the promise of life and light. Why? At the time of the recording of Malachi, the year is 430 BC. The Jews are returning to Israel from Babylonian captivity. Persia still ruled and occupied the land of Israel. So they're released from captivity from Babylon, sent back to the land of Israel. But yet there's still another ruler there, Persia, still occupies the land of Israel. Then in 333 BC, Israel falls to the Greeks. And in 323, Israel falls yet again to the Egyptians. And in 204 BC, Syria captures Israel, and they come under serious persecution. In 165 BC, the Jews recapture Jerusalem. And in 63 BC, now Rome enters the scene, and the Roman Empire has come and gained control of Israel. Occupation after occupation, Israel longs for this long-awaited Messiah. They're waiting for this one that would be announced, that Malachi said that there would be one that Elijah would come, and Elijah would come to establish and announce and proclaim to Israel that the Messiah has come to return Israel to their sovereignty and to their previous glory once again. This is what they're longing for. This is what Israel's longing for, that Elijah would come, announce this great and awesome day of the Lord, that the Messiah has come, and that Israel would once again have their sovereignty as a nation. Not occupation, but sovereignty, and that they would return to their former glory that they experienced under King David. And so if you're Israel, they're longing for light to break into darkness. They're waiting for this promised Messiah. How long, O Lord? How long, O Lord? How long are we gonna wait? 400 years. We've been waiting centuries for this promised one. Israel longing. How many more times must we be occupied before you establish your kingdom again? This is what they're longing for. You said you would bring the Messiah from this Davidic line, this line of David. David was one of the kings in the days of old that established Israel into their glory years, their dominant years. And they said, you said you would bring this Messiah from the Davidic line. You said you would send Elijah to announce your coming. When will this darkness end, Israel? You're longing. You're longing for light to break into a dark situation. You're waiting for light to come and break into the situation in which you're living in, generation after generation, occupation after occupation. But I wonder, friends, if we were with them in those days, could it be that for Israel, they have something in front of them that they're longing for the Messiah to come and deal with and take care of? But could it be that there's more going on than what's before them? Could it be that for Israel, they see what's in front of them, but there's actually more going on than what they see in front of them? John 1 carries on and says that the Word became incarnate, made flesh, came to dwell among us. And Jesus came to his own, but his own did not recognize him. They expected a Messiah who would come to establish the kingdom of Israel and end the occupation of Rome. So there's more going on. So Israel's expecting one form of a Messiah. And so they're waiting. So when he comes in the form in which he comes in, though it was prophesied by the prophets of old, though they should have known and expected his arrival in that way, when he comes in that way, they're not ready for him. Could it be that there's more going on? And so catch this, their expectation was misaligned. What they were hoping for and what they were longing for was misaligned. this is what they were hoping for. They were hoping that Jesus would come to establish the kingdom of Israel. But Jesus was not coming to establish the kingdom of Israel. He was coming to establish the kingdom of heaven. But if you're part of Israel, if you're a Jew back in that day, you're expecting the Messiah to come and establish the kingdom of Israel. But maybe there's more going on. He's not coming to establish the kingdom of Israel, but the kingdom of heaven. That's why in the first chapter of Mark, it says this: the time has come. The kingdom of God has come near. Repent, believe in the good news. The kingdom of Israel was only a forerunner to the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of Israel was only a forerunner to the kingdom of heaven. The Messiah has not come just to establish the kingdom of Israel, but bigger and greater, more going on. He's come to establish the kingdom of heaven. And so John 1 makes this huge announcement. Hear, O Israel, the one you've been waiting for is here. The sign you have longed for is here. This thing that the prophet Malachi talked about has finally arrived. And Jesus says this in the 11th chapter of Matthew: for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. But if you're willing to accept it, John is the Elijah who was to come. Jesus states, it's recorded in the 11th chapter of Matthew, this promise from Malachi that Elijah will come and announce this great and awesome day of the Lord. If you're willing to accept it, John the Baptist, John, the one that's recorded in the first chapter of John, is the Elijah. He's the one that has come to announce the great and awesome day of the Lord. The prophesied promise from Malachi being fulfilled in John 1. A witness to the light. John is. He testifies of the light. He's come to announce it. I love that first song we did, by the way. It's like, all hail, all hail. Here's John. The Messiah has come. He's the Elijah. All hail that Jesus, the Messiah, has come. John's pointing people to the light as one calling out in the wilderness as the new Elijah. And so 7 times in 13 verses, they use the word light. I think light is significant. They're going to use it 7 times. What is the light then? Because we could jump to an assumption or conclusion that John, the now promised Elijah, has come and pointing people to the light. But what's the light? The light is given to us plainly in verse 4. It says this: in him, in the Messiah, was life, and this life was the light. Watch this. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was in the beginning. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning. When light was birthed in the creation narrative, it ushered in life. And here he is in verse 4 of John 1, in him was life, and that life was the light. What Jesus is coming when he talks about light is he's bringing life. So when they say all this, 7 times talks about light, 7 times he's talking about life, that he has come to bring life. Jesus is bringing light against the darkness, not against the empires of the world, not against the empires that have conquered and occupied Israel, but against an enemy that's far more beastly. Could it be that there's more going on? That Jesus didn't just come, the Father didn't send the Son just to deal with Rome. Rome's the current occupier over Israel. The Father didn't just send the Son to deal with Rome. It could be that there's more going on. The Messiah is being sent to bring light to darkness that isn't Rome, but watch this, but that is behind Rome. The Messiah is sent to deal with the darkness that's not Rome itself, but the darkness that's behind Rome. A darkness that is the dragon and the beast recorded in Revelation. A darkness that's more beastly, more demonic. They believe that the light and life they need is deliverance from Rome, but it's not really the deliverance from an occupation they need. It's deliverance from a satanic force that's behind the evil of Rome. So could it be that there's more going on in the arrival of the Messiah than what's literally just in front of them that's Rome? They think, come and establish the kingdom of Israel, dethrone Rome, give us our sovereignty. And he's like, oh, it's actually what's behind Rome that I'm dealing with. I've come to bring light to darkness. And it's the evil satanic force that's behind Rome that I've come to deal with. Could it be that there's more going on? Light isn't merely to break hold of Rome, but light is to break the stronghold of the devil, sin, and death. Satan brings darkness, Jesus brings light. Satan brings death, Jesus brings life. That's why in John 10:10 it says this, the devil is like this, that he is like a thief that comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus says, but I have come that they may have life and life to the full. Oh, there's that word again, life. Are you living? That he has come to bring you life. But aren't we living, Jesus? Yes, but I've come to bring you life and life to the full. The thief brings darkness, the Messiah brings light. The thief steals life, the Messiah restores life. The thief kills, the Messiah resurrects. Oh, and then I love it. Then we get to the 5th verse. And it says, the light overcomes the darkness. The light has not been overcome. Satan and sin, darkness has not overcome Jesus. The light that is being birthed into the world through the incarnation of the Word made flesh. The decision by the Father to send the Son is not a sign that darkness has overcome light, but that light has now invaded darkness. It's not like, oh, darkness won, so I'm going to have to send light. Oh, no. And John is stating here that since the beginning, the light has shined, is shining, and will continue to shine. It has not, will not, and cannot be overcome. Isn't that amazing? John is making a statement here. This is why I love when he says in the beginning, he references us to the very beginning. He says, since the beginning and until now, the light has shined, will continue to shine, and will always continue to shine. It has not, will not, and cannot be overcome by darkness. I love that. It's like, I wonder if sometimes in these days, as darkness is all around, if the devil thinks he won. You know, because sometimes we can see it like that, what's in front of us, and we get stuck with what's in front of us. Like for Israel, it was Rome was in front of them, but it was what was behind Rome. And I wonder for us, sometimes we see what's in front of us, and we forget that there's more going on, that Jesus is dealing with stuff that's behind the evil in our world. Sorry, that the devil's behind the evil in the world. And it's like we look, maybe we see abuse, we see war, we see all these evil things going on in the world, and we think that's the issue. Jesus, deal with the issue, deal with that. But could it be, friends, that there's more going on? That there's a beastly force that's behind the evil in the world. And Jesus says, I've come to deal with that. So for Israel, they're like, deal with Rome. And he's like, no. Because before Rome, it was the Egyptians. Before them, it was the Greeks. And before them, it was Persia. And before them, it was the Babylonians. He's like, no, I'm not come to deal with that. I've come to deal with the one that's behind that. Could it be that Jesus has come to deal with something far darker? Oh, and then the promise of life, where we started. And I love this. He says this, that the light, and remember the light is the life. It's life. This life, he says then, is for all humankind. It's for all mankind. He says that this light gives light to everyone, light to everyone, life to everyone. What a revolutionary statement that Jesus is making here. Light to everyone, life to everyone. What a revolutionary statement. Should it not say this, though? It gives light to the Jew, for surely the promised Messiah is the King of the Jews. For the Jews to reestablish the Davidic kingdom that is promised from the Davidic line. Isn't that what it should say? That's if you were Israel, that's what you would think it should say. But then 4 times it states, for all, for all, for all. Verse 4, it says this, in him was life, and that life was the light of all humankind, all humanity. So verse 7, so that through him all might believe. Verse 9, true light that gives light to everyone. And verse 12, to all who would receive him, to all those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. That's why we call the series For All to See. Oh, but if you're Israel, they're thinking he's come, the Messiah is going to be sent to reestablish the kingdom of Israel. He's like, no. It's not just Israel. You're the forerunner that's to bring the Messiah through the Davidic line. But it's for everybody. It's for all generations. It's for all people. It's for all nations. It's for all tongues and all tribes. It's for all people. It's for all to see. It's not just for the Westerner or the privileged. It's not just for the Jew. I love when Paul gets on this too. Later in the New Testament, he writes some letters to churches and he gets on this too. And he says it's for all to see. For the Jew and the Greek. Oh, it's for all to see. It's for all to see. It's for all to see. I love this. I was up in Seashell a few weeks ago speaking at my friend's church. And Pastor Jody is one of their pastors there. And their church is really fun. She writes me the day, a couple days after we had left. And she says, Kat, it's so fun what's going on at the church. and what God's just doing in Seashell. And they've had this big kind of growth spurt of new people coming who are exploring Jesus, making decisions for Jesus, but from a very specific community within Seashell. It's not just from all over. It's from a very specific community, and many of these people coming to exploring Jesus are from the Wiccan community, from the witch community. And Pastor Jody writes me, and she's like, would you be praying for me? Tomorrow night, I'm going to host 17 new believers who are all previous Wiccan witches, and have all come to meet Jesus in the last year, and we've baptized many of them, and 17 of those ladies have made decisions. I said, oh yeah, I'll be praying up on it. A few days after that, she messages me again. She's like, hey, thanks for praying for that. That night went so well. We've been discipling them in my home. Pastor Joy says, I've been discipling them in my home. She's like, and now they want to invite more and more of their friends who are into Wiccan or tarot cards and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, because for the first time, they're experiencing the presence and power of God, and they're experiencing life. Not just I'm alive, but I'm living. And they've experienced real living through Jesus. And what they were looking for through this other avenue was leaving them hollow. And so it's for all to see. It's for people who've known Jesus their whole life. What a privilege. It's for those who discover Jesus at a later stage in life. It's for the person who was a Wiccan who's now following and apprenticing under Jesus. It's for everybody. It's for all to see. And the sending of the Messiah is to bring light and life to all, not just to Israel, not just to the Jew, but to everybody. What a revolutionary statement. Maybe not for you and I hearing it. Oh, but for Israel to hear that. For John to record that. Oh, a little bit audacious in that day. It's 4 times he says it's for all. It's for all. So then we're back to our question. What is life then? What is life? Are you living? We'll come full circle and let's end with our same question. The question then is, are you living? And I think in John 1, he gives us the answer. How do we find life and life to the full? It says it's to receive him and to become children of God in the 13th verse. He says, to all who are willing to receive him, have the right to become children of God. This is life. Real life, true life that was lost in Eden. Sin and death came, separating God and humanity, making what was alive dead. What happened in Eden, what was alive is now dead. What was promised through the prophets, what Israel waited for centuries for, has now been announced by John, the new Elijah, one calling out in the wilderness. And there is more going on than meets the eye. It isn't simply light into the current Roman occupation. It is light into the demonic darkness that has brought sin and death into the world, starting in Eden. But God is bringing light and has indeed brought light. And the darkness has not overcome it. The light is the life of Jesus, and it is through his life that we find life. Life and life to the full can be found nowhere except the person of Jesus. Which is why I think we have a generation of people lost, hollow, walking around alive but not living. Because it can only be found in the person of Jesus. Oh, and I love this promise from Isaiah, the 9th chapter. Isaiah records this, and he says, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Friends, this is Advent. This is the Christmas season. This is the longing. Israel longed for the Messiah, and we're still in a season of longing because we're in a place in the narrative where we're post-resurrection and ascension, that's Jesus being resurrected from the grave and ascending to the right hand of the Father, but we have not yet come to the time where his kingdom's fully realized, and so we're still in this Advent waiting season as we wait to see it fully realized. The question we started with then is, are you living? The question is, have you received new life? And this is how I would just love to conclude our time after we've been meditating for the last 3 weeks on John chapter 1 is this. When he says that life and life to the full can be found to anyone who wants to receive, who's willing to receive Jesus, you get to experience new life. And I just wonder, friends, if for some of us in this room, that this Advent season, this Christmas season, we need to receive him afresh. It's so fun. Paul talks about being filled by the Spirit. He's like, this is actually a deal. It's like, oh, we should ask every morning when we wake up. I think often the revelation that we get to be called children of God should be a daily reminder. And I just wonder if there's people that just need to be refreshed and reminded afresh that you're a child of God. And I wonder, friends, if there's people in the room who have yet to receive life and life in the full, and you kind of recognize that language of being hollow or empty, and you're like, yeah, I'm going around, but I'm maybe alive, but I don't feel like I'm living. I just wonder, friends, if there's anyone that the clue, the mystery of the Messiah is made clear through John chapter 1, that life and that fullness of life is actually being found by being a child of God and receiving his life. And I wonder, friends, if there's just anyone that this morning is maybe that time for you where you're like, hey, maybe it's for the first time. I just need to receive Jesus maybe for the first time. And I wonder, friends, if there's anyone in the room that you're there. It's for all to see. It's for you too. Just like it is for those women in Seychelles who have come out of the Wiccan community and have found Jesus. You can too. And so I don't know, Jared, maybe I can just pray to close, and then your team can lead us into our next element. If you're willing, why don't we close our eyes? We'll just pray. I'd love to pray as we conclude our meditation on John chapter 1. But as we close the prayer, I just want to give an invitation just privately to people. Don't want to make a show about anything, but just privately. If that's you and you just feel like, hey, I feel like life has not been to the full. I wonder if you considered your life, if there was a moment that you've ever said yes to Jesus, and if not, you just have the opportunity just now privately to make that decision, maybe for the first time this Christmas season, this Advent season. It's quite simple. I did that in my late teens, going into my 20s when I made that decision. And it's quite simple. We just say, Jesus, oh, that word from John 1. Thank you that you came incarnate, bringing light and life. And Jesus, I want to receive that life. I want to come into a relationship with you. That's all it is. I want to come into a relationship with you. Give my life to you. Come into a relationship with you. I want to say yes to you. And maybe for others, there's just a moment. Just have a moment now just to be reminded afresh that you're a child of God. And that the promise that we see in John chapter 1, when he says, not only do you be called children of God, but you get to have life. And I love in John 10:10 when he says, I have come that you may have life and life to the full. Maybe you just need to be reminded afresh this morning that Jesus wants to bring you life and life to the full. Because when he says in the beginning, he was the Word, he was in the beginning, and in the beginning was the light, and he brought light in verse 4, where he says that light was the life to all mankind. He has come to bring you life. Maybe we just need to be reminded of that as we meditate on John chapter 1, that he has promised that. He has promised that you can have life and life to the full. And he has promised that since the beginning, he has been birthing light, which is life. And through the coming of the Messiah, he has now fulfilled that promise. And it was announced by John, who's the new Elijah. So you get to have it. You get to say yes to that. You get to be reminded of that good news. So Jesus, thank you so much. Thank you so much that you would send the Son for all to see. For all to see. Thank you that you sent the Son to deal with things that is not directly in front of us, but you sent the Son to deal with something that was unseen to us. But yet we see it play out every day in our life, the evil and darkness of our life, and in our cities and in our world, the things that are in front of us. And yet, when you send the Messiah, you're dealing with the thing that's actually behind those things, that same serpent that was in Eden. You've come to deal with and have dealt with. And we're thankful for that, God, that your triumph is our victory. We're thankful that we get to be called children of God. What an honor. Oh, we don't take it lightly, God. Oh, it invokes our worship. It invokes our hearts to worship you, God. It invokes our our adoration and our praise. Because that opportunity to come into relationship with you, God, we could have never done it. We could have never done it. And yet the beauty of Christmas is that you did it. And Father, you sent the Son so that we could have a relationship with you, that we could know you, we could become children of God, we could walk life with you. Not just for eternity, but taste and see now. So we just thank you for that, God. Thank you. What a privilege. In Jesus' name.